Cops are usually the ones who think they're in charge of a situation, but what happens when their higher authority teaches them a lesson?
I suggest get a supervisor out here.
If you're on the
I'm asking for a supervisor.
Okay, call him. Call the
No, you call him. I asked for one. I asked for a supervisor.
Okay.
Here are 9 cops who got destroyed by higher authority. In this situation, a group of police officers approached a man and got uncomfortably close to him, prompting the man to request the name and badge number of one of the officers. He also politely asked the officer to step back a bit because he was invading his personal space. However, instead of addressing the man's concerns, the officer responded aggressively by demanding the man's identification. When asked why he needed it, the officer retorted with an aggressive tone, stating that the man had been taking pictures of a federal building.
Can I get your identification, please?
Why?
Why? Because you're taking pictures of a federal terminal, which is a Homeland Security issue.
Are you Homeland Security?
Yes.
Seems like you're
Yep.
back at the police department.
That's right.
There's nothing wrong with
Homeland
exercising
Security
my
is
First
done by
Amendment.
everybody. It's done by everybody. It's the Homeland Security.
Is it a crime
Right.
to exercise my rights on a public sidewalk?
What? To take pictures of a federal...
Despite the man's repeated explanations that he was taking photos from a public sidewalk, the police officer either failed to acknowledge this fact or chose to ignore it, persisting in his request for the man's identification. Frustrated by the ongoing demands, the man sought to clarify the situation by asking the officers what crime they suspected him of committing. In response, the officers stated that they merely wanted to identify him as a precautionary measure in case something untoward occurred. Unsatisfied with this vague response, the man pressed further and asked them for a reasonable, articulable suspicion as to why they needed his identification. This request appeared to catch the officer off guard for a moment, but he eventually asserted that the man's video recording of the building was deemed suspicious.
You're taking video, which
I'm
might
exercising
might lead to some type of terrorist act, right? We don't know. We don't know that.
I'm with my
How
family.
do you know that?
I'm with my. I just told you know how you don't know that because I told you I've never been here. I'm a tourist. I'm with my family. This is interesting. So I took a picture
and just
from the public sidewalk.
To take your
Listen, I just want to cut this. I want to make this simple.
In an effort to clear up the situation, the man provided a clear and detailed explanation of the events. He even went the extra mile by politely sharing his name with the officers. However, despite his cooperation and willingness to provide information, the officers remained adamant about seeing his identification, continuing to press the issue.
On the public sidewalk, exercising his First Amendment right,
they know
which
that.
is a protected activity.
They know that. That's
So
why. That's why
it
you're.
should've ended
That's
right
why
there.
nothing. That's why nothing is happening right now except for
Exactly.
us trying to get your name. That's all.
And I told you my name, David.
Okay, well, can you, if you show me your identification
I just
again,
told you already.
well, you're on your way.
Sir,
I don't
I told you
understand what the problem is. Just like you're,
Because I don't show ID unless you suspect me of committing a crime. Me exercising my
The man, once again, firmly declined the officer's request to show his ID. Instead, he took the opportunity to educate the officers about First Amendment protected activities, emphasizing his right to engage in such activities, like photography in a public space. After a considerable amount of explaining and sharing his knowledge, it seemed that the officers realized their error and decided to leave the man alone, without any further consequences. In the following incident, a group of police officers confiscated a man's phone and subjected him to being placed in handcuffs merely because he was filming within a police department parking lot. One of the officers insisted that the area was private property, but the man quickly challenged this assertion, questioning how a police department could be considered private property. Despite the man's valid question, the officer chose to ignore it and proceeded to request the man's identification. Additionally, it came to light that another officer had turned off the man's phone during the encounter, which raised concerns about a potential violation of the man's First Amendment right to record in public spaces.
Up to somebody on private property, especially you.
me.
Yeah, you. Down with your little fucking blue line fucking gang. Oh, you don't like it? You don't like it? You guys do it to everybody. Go ahead, pull it out. Pull it out. Ooh, let's play fucking flashlight war.
Inquiry as well, and informed the man that he was being detained. Recognizing the seriousness of the situation, the man exercised his right to request legal representation and asked for a lawyer.
Anything about theft? Sean, this is why you record every time. So I hope you have good PC. What was your RAS? Your reasonable, articulable suspicion that my son was committing a crime, about to commit a crime, or did commit a crime. What was it?
You're the difficult one.
You're damn straight. When it comes to my son, absolutely, I am difficult. So
After that, a sergeant arrived on the scene, and the police officer proceeded to explain the situation to their superior. While the exact details of the conversation between the sergeant and the officer remained unheard, it became evident that something significant had transpired. Shortly afterward, the police officer informed the man that he was free to leave. It appeared that the sergeant had intervened and resolved the situation, which might have resulted in the officer receiving guidance or correction from their higher-ranking colleague. Despite being released, the man remained understandably upset about the entire ordeal. He expressed his frustration and dissatisfaction by threatening the officers with a lawsuit, highlighting the potential consequences of mishandling encounters with the public.
Why? Because you're taking pictures of a federal terminal, which is a Homeland Security issue.
Are you Homeland Security?
Yes.
Seems like you're
Yep.
back at the police department.
That's right.
There's something wrong with
Homeland
exercising
Security
my
is done by
First
everybody. It's done
Is-
by everybody. It's the Homeland Security.
Amendment. Is it a crime to exercise my rights on a public sidewalk?
Now, it's unclear what exactly happened in the end, but in case the man did file a lawsuit, they would be in deep trouble, which could lead to them being fired and fined heavily. In this incident, a man was pulled over by a police officer, and understandably, he inquired about the reason for the stop. However, the officer seemed reluctant to provide any explanation until he had obtained the man's identification. The man, being cooperative, was willing to provide his ID without hesitation. However, rather than simply proceeding with the standard procedure for a traffic stop, the officer began asking a series of unrelated and seemingly unnecessary questions. It was a situation that left the man puzzled, as the officer's line of questioning appeared to diverge from the expected protocol for such stops.
Oil company.
Gilmore Oil Company?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How long you been there?
That's why that is.
Well, I'm just talking to you. I see your shirt there. I'm just asking. Is it wrong to ask you questions about where you work?
Well, I'm just trying to figure out what that has to do with the stop.
Okay. All right. Well, if you don't want, just casual conversation, that's fine.
Got
Since I got
somebody-
you stopped there, you're driving 65, and speed limit 70. I'm just wondering what's wrong with me. Are you okay?
Then, the officer began to inquire about the man's employment details, including the company he worked for and the duration of his employment there. Despite his confusion, the man complied and provided the officer with his ID. He couldn't help but express his bewilderment, wondering aloud why the officer was delving into these seemingly unrelated matters. Finally, after this unusual line of questioning, the officer revealed the reason for the stop, which turned out to be quite surprising. The man had been pulled over for driving at a speed of 65 miles per hour in a 70 miles per hour zone.
You're driving 65, and speed limit 70. I'm just wondering what's wrong with me. Are you okay?
Other than
You okay? You ain't.
traveling 5 miles below the speed limit is
Yes,
a
sir.
reason.
I'm just checking on you. That's all I'm doing. Okay.
Yes, sir.
You good?
I'm great.
Awesome.
How are you?
I'm doing better than I deserve.
The encounter continued with the police officer asking the man if he was all right. The officer seemed to be trying to paint a picture that he was merely checking up on the man's well-being. However, it was evident that the man wasn't buying into this narrative. The questions kept coming, with the officer inquiring about where the man was coming from. The man, still puzzled, wondered whether he was obligated to share this information with the officer, and why the officer was asking in the first place. After this brief exchange, the officer left the scene, leaving the man feeling baffled by the series of questions. However, the officer returned and issued a warning, though he opted not to disclose the specific reason for the warning, despite the man's repeated inquiries.
This here's a warning, okay? No court date, no fine, nothing like that. You can throw this paper away when you get to the house. Ain't nothing to really worry about, all right?
Okay, what was the warning for?
All right. Have a good day, all
What was
right?
the warning for, sir? He didn't even say what a warning been for, bro.
It appeared that the police officer was eager to wrap up the encounter swiftly, likely because he couldn't provide a clear or satisfactory reason for why he had stopped the man. Not one to let things go unanswered, the man decided to step out of his car and pose the question once more, seeking an explanation for the warning. This time, the officer did provide an answer, stating that the warning was issued for traveling below the speed limit. This explanation left the man feeling perplexed, as it seemed like a trivial reason for the entire interaction. Finally, it seemed that the officer had reached his limit and didn't wish to prolong the conversation any further. He bid the man a good day and explained that he had other matters to attend to, leaving the man with lingering confusion about the peculiar stop. In this incident, a group of police officers approached a man and accused him of filming on private property. However, the man, knowledgeable about his rights, took the opportunity to educate the officers about public easement, which allows filming in certain public areas. Due to the lack of any wrongdoing on his part, the man declined to provide his identification. Recognizing the need for a higher-ranking officer to resolve the situation, the man requested the assistance of a sergeant. Unfortunately, the sergeant appeared unresponsive or unwilling to engage in a conversation. Take a look.
I'm the higher up, Sarge. He says Sarge. Hello? Hello? He doesn't want to talk to us.
Well, they're soliciting a trespass.
Me, you can't solicit a trespass and get a grip on it. You just solicited a trespass on video.
On my property because I won't be trespassing.
There you go, I'm on your property. Have a nice day. You can, listen.
You have ID, man?
Nope. This is you know what a public easement is? I never stepped on the property.
I just watched you.
Nope, this is not her property.
It
This
is.
a public
No,
easement.
it's not. This is.
No, it is. Do you see this sign?
Do you have your ID, sir?
Do you see this sign? No, I don't have my ID.
Okay, what's your name?
No, not interested.
What's your name?
Not interested. Listen to your sergeant. He's going to tell you to go back to work.
Not so. I'm working
Sergeant,
right
can I
now.
have a civil conversation with you, sir? Sergeant.
Then, an individual stepped out of their car and approached the police officers who were hassling the man for filming. While the exact content of their conversation remains unknown, what's clear is that as a result of this interaction, the police officers ceased their harassment of the man. It's plausible to assume that the bystander, perhaps with a good understanding of the law, managed to impart valuable information or insights to the officers, ultimately leading to the resolution of the situation. It was a moment that demonstrated the potential for informed citizens to play a role in ensuring that encounters with law enforcement are conducted in accordance with legal standards and respect for individual rights.
Sergeant, is there any opportunity to converse with you, sir? No.
I copy, sir. I copy. It's no. Where are we from?
Well, at least the sergeant knows the law. We'll start with that.
The officers were later investigated and sent in for additional training, hopefully without pay. In this scenario, a man was simply filming his surroundings, which happened to include the FedEx building. However, his actions caught the attention of a security guard, who approached him and inquired about what he was doing. The man, for whatever reason, chose not to provide an answer to the security guard's question. In response, the security guard opted to make a phone call, presumably to contact the police or another authority figure. Take a look.
I suggest get a supervisor out here.
If you're on the sidewalk,
I'm asking for a supervisor.
okay, call him. Call this.
No, you call him. I asked for one. I asked for a supervisor.
Okay.
You're not gonna give me a
I'm
supervisor.
gonna get you a supervisor.
Okay.
There's no sense in me getting you a supervisor.
Okay. You need to get one so you don't do something stupid. Hi guys.
After some time had passed, a police officer arrived at the scene and informed the man that they had received a call regarding his suspicious activity. The man, taken aback by the accusation, quickly clarified that he was standing on a public easement, indicating that he had the right to be there. However, the police officer seemed persistent and didn't seem willing to leave the man alone. Frustrated by the continued questioning, the man decided to request the presence of a supervisor to address the situation.
Sense in me getting you a supervisor.
Okay. You need to get one so you don't do something stupid.
You obviously understand the law, I guess.
Evidently better than you do about the easement, dude.
You gotta swear, man.
Because that's what I do. That's what I do. I'm a grown man. I can swear all day. I'm gonna tell us this is their property, and you don't even know if it is or not. You hadn't even looked, had you?
Tensions escalated quickly, with both the man and the police officer raising their voices and talking over each other. The man became increasingly insistent, urging the officer to check the property lines to confirm his right to be there. However, It was evident that the officer was reluctant to undertake this task. Ultimately, faced with the persistence of the man and the lack of any legitimate reason to detain or question him further, the police officer had no alternative but to abandon the situation and leave the man to continue with his activities. The officer was never punished for his actions. This incident begins with a rather unpleasant encounter involving a discourteous police officer who insists on obtaining identification from a man who was innocently using his drone to capture footage. However, the man firmly asserts his rights, maintaining that he isn't obligated to provide his ID as he hasn't committed any wrongdoing. He emphasizes that filming in public spaces is his protected right.
I don't need to provide that.
Yes, you do.
No, I don't.
If I'm asking you who you are and why you're videotaping our facility, you have to provide me with some kind of identification. So do you have any identification?
To require identification under the law, you need to be able to articulate a crime that I'm about to commit or I have committed.
Despite the man's efforts to assert his rights and explain the legality of his actions, the police officer appeared entirely disinterested in any of the information provided. In fact, he went so far as to explicitly state that he didn't care about the rulings of the Supreme Court, effectively dismissing the man's arguments.
You're going around, you're videotaping our state police facility for no apparent reason, and if I'm asking you who you are, you have to provide me with identification.
I don't have to, no.
It's just like anything else.
No, it's not.
Yes, you do.
I don't.
Yes, you do.
In fact, your public information officer already has dealt with this here, and so has a few other officers, so...
I don't care who's dealt with it. I'm asking you for identification because I want to know who you are right now. And I want to know what your reason is for videotaping our facility.
Well, first of all, Supreme Court has covered that filming out in public is perfectly legal.
I don't care what the
and that is not a suspicion of crime, so therefore you have no suspicion of...
As the situation continued to unfold, another police officer arrived at the scene but remained passive, not intervening in any way. Frustrated by the lack of resolution, the man decided to request the presence of their sergeant in the hope of finding a resolution. In a somewhat smug manner, the rude cop informed the man that his sergeant was right behind him, seemingly confident that the sergeant would support his stance. However, what transpired next was entirely unexpected. The sergeant, upon hearing the situation, confirmed what the man had been asserting all along, that he wasn't obligated to identify himself in this particular circumstance.
I get a supervisor, somebody higher up.
Sure, here's my sergeant. He's coming out right now.
And he'll tell you.
Okay, no problem. Hey, Elaine. He was flying the drone out in front, videotaping. All I'm doing is asking for a form of identification so we can identify who he is. He's refusing.
Go to your first sergeant, not a problem. Not a problem.
He can videotape as much as he wants. We don't have to get any form of identification.
He can videotape, not a problem.
Faced with the sergeant's confirmation of the man's rights, the rude cop found himself in a difficult position. He had no option but to acknowledge his mistake and concede the argument. In an anticlimactic turn of events, the rude cop left the scene. Following the officer's departure, the sergeant took the opportunity to apologize to the man for any inconvenience caused by the encounter. In response, the man offered a thoughtful suggestion, stating that there is a need to do a better job of educating police officers about citizens' rights. Those cops were then sent on additional training. In this scenario, two police officers were confronting a man who was filming inside a post office when their captain arrived at the scene. The expressions on the officers' faces shifted noticeably once they realized that the man knew their captain. It was a look of embarrassment, as they were undoubtedly aware that they had been bothering the man without any legitimate reason. The first officer found himself in a situation where he had some explaining to do. What was particularly noticeable was how his voice trembled while he tried to convey his side of the story to the captain. The trembling voice likely reflected his unease and anxiety, knowing that their actions were questionable and might require justification in the presence of their superior. Take a look.
How you doing, Captain?
Hello.
Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you again. How you doing?
Pretty good.
Shake your hand.
Yeah.
How are you?
Captain, I just want to say that you're one of the best captains I've ran into.
That's okay. That's okay. Appreciate it. So what's going on?
Okay,
so basically they want more trespassing. He's basically, I told him, basically got called, told him he's 30 feet. I'm asking for his identification. I told him he's under train. He refused to identify who he is against identification.
The man proceeded to calmly and thoroughly explain the entire situation to the captain. While the conversation progressed, there came a point where emotions began to run high, and the man inquired if he was being detained. The captain responded with a firm no. However, an interesting twist occurred when one of the female officers contradicted the captain's response by asserting that the man was, in fact, being detained. This disagreement within the ranks highlighted a disconnect or miscommunication among the officers, raising questions about their actions and the need for clarity in such encounters.
In any law, I came in here, I didn't disturb anybody. I came in here and I was recording the greeting cards, and I wasn't even aiming it at the employees or the customers at that time. And the branch manager came out and said, wanted to know who I was. She wouldn't identify herself. She wanted to know who I was with. I said I'm with myself. And she thought that the rules were on her door that said no photography. And I went and I looked and said, man, there's no rules. There's a poster 7 in here that allows photographs for news purposes in entrances, lobbies, foyers, and corridors. And that's where I've been. I haven't been in any restricted areas. I am completely following the law, and I'm following post office rules and regulations. But as we all know, the post office, they don't know their rules like they should know. So I'm here to kind of educate them that what I'm doing is lawful. I'm not creating any disturbance. Holding a camera does not create a disturbance. I understand you got called here.
So that's not creating disturbance?
He rolled up code 3 because elders. Captain, am I being detained, Captain? No. Elders has got me.
In a moment of realization, the female officer who had contradicted the captain fell silent, and her colleague followed suit. It seemed that they recognized the gravity of their actions and chose to defer to their superior. With the officers now quiet, the captain was able to resume the conversation with the man.
Right now, you and I are talking.
Okay.
Good. All right. So, all right. How much longer do you plan on?
Well, they're closing up at 5 o'clock, you know. And I really expected, I went downtown to the post office, walked all through there, 3 cameras rolling, nobody said a word.
The officers weren't punished on paper, but later had quite a speech with the captain following the incident. Now, in this scenario, from the very beginning, tensions flared as a woman confronted a pair of police officers about their presence on someone's property. The woman demanded to know what their probable cause was for showing up. The officers seemed at a loss for words, which came as no surprise to anyone witnessing the exchange. Undeterred, the woman took matters into her own hands and peered into their patrol car, spotting a laptop inside. With newfound ammunition, she questioned the officers about their reasonable, articulable suspicion that her son had committed, was about to commit, or was in the process of committing a crime.
To roll up to somebody on private property, especially you.
Me?
Yeah, you. Down with your little fucking line fucking gang. Oh, you don't like it? You don't like it? You guys do it to everybody. Go ahead, pull it out. Pull it out. Ooh, let's play fucking flashlight war. What was he doing?
I can't tell you.
Fixing a fucking quad? See what the car really is for.
Rather than providing a straightforward answer to the woman's question, one of the cops attempted to inject some humor by labeling her as difficult. However, the woman wasn't deterred by this remark. Instead, she affirmed her determination, emphasizing that she would go to great lengths to protect her son. The cops found themselves at a loss for words, as they hadn't anticipated this level of resolve and determination from the mother. It was a moment where the tables turned, and they were left somewhat humbled and outwitted by her unwavering commitment to safeguarding her child.
I don't see anything about theft. Sean, this is why you record every time. So I hope you have good PC. What was your RAS? Your reasonable, articulable suspicion that my son was committing a crime, about to commit a crime, or did commit a crime. What was it?
You're the difficult one.
You're damn straight. When it comes to my son, absolutely, I am difficult. So I will fight to the death for my kid. You got me right.
They were then sent on additional training, since they were clearly severely lacking knowledge. In this next case, we find a situation where a man was simply exercising his First Amendment right to freedom of the press by capturing footage in a public space. However, things took an unexpected turn when a female police officer began to harass him for the simple act of taking photos in a public area. The officer demanded to see the man's identification, but he firmly refused and sought to understand the reason behind her request. In response, The officer explained that she found his behavior suspicious and raised concerns about him wearing a ski mask during the encounter.
Protection.
Okay, let me see.
I can give you my name, but first I want to know under what penal code am I being detained?
You're being detained because you're acting in a suspicious way in an area with businesses.
In what way?
You're wearing a ski mask, dude. Come on.
It's windy. I'm riding a bike.
Okay. Do you have ID on you?
I don't. I have my name.
The argument between the man and the female police officer continued for a while until her supervisor arrived at the scene. Seizing the opportunity, the man proceeded to explain the situation to the supervisor, hoping for a more reasonable resolution. However, the female cop, seemingly unconvinced by the man's explanation, accused him of lying about the circumstances.
Okay.
But first I asked for, is this a supervisor? Because you're kind of shaking. You're making me nervous.
Okay.
I'd like to speak with him. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Sir, I'm good. She walked up, sir, she walked up to me. She told me, give me your ID. And then she grabbed my camera and told me I was being detained. And I asked her under what penal code, and she told me under suspicious activity. And I want to know what suspicious activity. Okay. Because under my knowledge, I'm operating under the law, never over it. Yes, sir. Under the First Amendment. I know you know it.
In an interesting turn of events, the supervisor decided to address the matter by stating that he would review the body camera footage when they returned to the station. This announcement seemed to catch the female officer off guard, and her face turned noticeably red. It was then revealed that she had left her body camera in the car, a crucial piece of equipment that officers are typically required to wear during interactions with the public. The situation added an element of uncertainty, as the absence of body camera footage could potentially impact the outcome of the dispute.
To the station, I'll get her body camera and I'll look at it.
I'll be over there too to detain that footage. I don't even see, she doesn't even have one on.
Although the video doesn't provide a visual of what transpired next, it's highly likely that the female officer received a stern reprimand or a significant lesson from her supervisor. The earlier revelation that she had left her body camera in the car and the subsequent promise to review the footage at the station might have led to a thorough evaluation of her actions.